thank you all for being here. And again, I apologize to those that are within the community for my delay. Let's get this thing started. So we have a quorum, which is great. Before we get started, does anybody need to abstain from anything they've seen on the agenda as we're looking forward through the agenda?
No.
Okay, great. And then has anybody been out to see any of the properties? Tom,
No.
you usually do that sometimes.
Yes, I went out to the one on South Huron.
Okay, great. Thank you for telling us. Anybody else?
Nope.
And has anybody been approached or spoken to anybody about these that might influence their voting?
No.
Okay, great. All right, well, let's do this. Let's jump into the actual meeting. So for those that are on the call, we will open up the floor for discussion. And again, I'll call on each item on the agenda and let whoever is applying for the state their case. We'll listen if there's anybody to also speak against the agenda item, then we will allow them to speak their case, and then we'll discuss as a board, and then we'll take a vote for the variance request. We will have Paul from the city tee it up to give us context to explain what's happening, and just so that's kind of the process that we'll be going through. Before we jump into the first one, did everybody look at the minutes from the last meeting, and did everybody have any changes before we approve those? If not, I'll take a motion to approve the minutes from last month.
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Oh, we got three. We'll take one of you guys. Okay. So all those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And I didn't hear any no, so we'll keep moving. And then let's do this. Let's go ahead and open the floor for discussion. So a motion for approving the floor to be opened.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Okay, and then I'll take Noel. Do you want to second that?
Sure.
Okay, thanks, Noel. All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, housekeeping stuff done. So let's jump into our first agenda item. Paul, if you want to tee us up for that one, that would be great.
Tommy,
And then we'll hear from
I
you.
think
Yes.
we have to approve the agenda.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Thank you for the reminder. Yes, let's do that. Anybody need to move anything around or change anything on the agenda? There was 3 items. Okay,
No.
so then a motion to approve the agenda.
So move.
Second.
Thank you. And all those in favor to approve the agenda?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Any opposed? All right. All right, here we go. All right, Paul, the floor is yours for the property on 508 Victoria.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a request for variance in the front yard setback at 508 Victoria. For those who can see the graphic or can't see the graphic, I guess I have an aerial photo up that shows the footprint of the building and the property. This is a single family home in a low density residential area. The hope here is to, I think, retain and installed egress window in the front of the structure. I've now brought up a copy of the site plan showing the location of that. It's in the front of the structure, not far from the driveway or the garage. I've also provided a street elevation kind of showing it's located under one of the windows near the driveway. Ingress windows, this is access to the basement for a living area. With that, we consider that part of the principal structure. Looking at the setbacks in this particular stretch of homes, I would be encroaching in the front yard setback. So the variance is to allow for that egress window to encroach within the front yard setback.
And Paul, this is the one that we had tabled last month because the petitioner wasn't present.
It is correct, and the applicant is online to answer any questions you might have.
And this is also one where the egress window has already been installed. Is that correct?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, if the applicant is on the call, let's go ahead and have them unmute and go ahead and kind of walk us through their application. And we'll all listen, and then we'll see if there's anybody that has any issues or questions about it from the community, and then we'll discuss as a board and we'll take a vote. All right, go ahead, and applicant, are you on the call?
It looks like Jim
Okay.
Anderson there.
Jim
but-
Anderson is, yeah. Jim, you can unmute yourself.
Okay, got me?
Gotcha,
We hear
yep.
you.
Okay, all right. All right, I've been following it for, since you started and stuff, but I guess, I've been doing foundation repair for over 35 years. And I pull permits for everything I do, because inspectors are for the homeowner, they're not for me. So, but anyway, on this location, I was called to it, the house was for sale. The lady that I did the work for, she's the one that ended up purchasing this property. I did all 4 walls here. I dug them, straightened them, supported them, sealed them, did the job. And what she did is she saw in my literature that I did egress windows. Now I'll do like approximately 35 egress windows a year. And she says, can it be installed? And I said, well, I says, it can be installed, but it depends on the setbacks and everything. And at one time, Green Bay had a height limit in the basement that you had to go by code. And so anyway, the location she wanted, I said it wouldn't work there because she didn't have enough property on the sides, driveway being one, and then the back, it was a full plumbing wall. And so when she had the, what about in the front here? And I didn't realize at this time, so I'm gonna blame my ignorance on it, that there was a setback on the front walls in Green Bay, okay? Usually when I install them, they're on the sides or in the back. So I said, yeah, I said, I can quote you on that. So she said, well, give me a quote on that. And I said, all right. So I submitted a email to Pete, and I asked him if I had to take another permit out for this installation of the driveway she wanted done and putting an egress window in. And he sent an email back to me. He said, no, that you just took one out for the foundation repair, shouldn't be a problem. So I continued with the job, and then as I went and after inspection, then this came up with this variance, and I've talked to Paul a couple of times, and I guess I'm lost. I don't know exactly which way to handle this or what you guys recommend, or if you want to put it this way, I learned the lesson. I didn't know about the setbacks on the front wall, so I'm gonna, and that's how it all came about. But it is installed, and actually it was inspected. That it was inspected by the inspector.
Did we lose Tommy? We might have lost Tommy.
You just moved from muted to unmuted to muted.
Hmm.
So I'll step in until we hear him again. Any questions for for Mr. Anderson from anybody?
Nope.
Any questions for Mr. Newmeyer from anybody?
Nope.
All right, so discussion. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Discussion among the members here about action on this item.
Well,
Okay.
it seems to me that it's a safety feature, and it sounded like it was like the only option available for the hardship. So I don't have a problem with this.
Nor do I, for the same reasons Jim just gave. It's the only wall left to do it. And for her to get sufficient use of the property that she's invested in, I think it's a reasonable thing to do and deserves a variance.
I would agree.
All right. I myself, just to comment, would have preferred to be dealing with this prior to installation, in the fact that we need a variance and setback. But it does also sound like maybe there was some confusion on whether or not that egress window was included in a permit that had previously been approved or something else. And, you know, that's not our job to suss out the ins and outs of that process, but suffice to say, you know, we know that miscommunications can happen. So I would have been in favor of approving this had it been a request that came in, you know, before the fact of the installation. So I don't see any sense in asking, you know, the petitioner to remove it and then go through, you know, channel again and ask for a variance. That doesn't seem to make any sense to me. So why don't we, barring any, you know, Tommy, if anybody knows Morse code, okay, I was gonna say Tommy could mute and unmute maybe in a pattern of dots and dashes that we could, you know, discern something.
I'm so sorry. What I would say though, if it's okay with everybody, just to pause real quick, I think Noel, just for the sake of my internet instability, is it okay if you just kind of keep the meeting going for today and you just kind of sub in? That way I'm not the hiccup as chair and running the meeting. Is that okay?
I'm happy to do that, Tommy.
Thank you, sir. And then if I happen to cut out
this one time ever and only.
Please don't hold the meeting up or anybody from the community because of my internet connection. And I'm so sorry. I did not expect this. So please forgive me. Same comments as Noel. And I would just add our question real quick, Paul. Is this the same application that we saw last week, or is this a different application? Because I don't remember it being, oh, it was? Yeah.
Same application as December, right? The applicant couldn't make it at that time, so we had to delay it, yes.
But the actual application that was submitted, because this one is a partial application. It's not even filled out.
It should be the same. If it isn't, then maybe that's my error, but it is the same person, same property, same applicant.
Maybe we missed that, or because we didn't really dig into it. Maybe I missed that last month, but just again, another comment for the record, just, you know, submitting an application that is actually thorough, that makes the case, you know, would be a request, I think, of the board. This one is, I think there's 3 different answers that are just completely missing. And I think one of them has an I don't know on it. And I think, you know, for the process here, yes, there's a case to be made and we can have conversations, but submitting an application that is, you know, fully written out and thought through, I think is really important for us to consider things. And that's my comment, but I have no problems with this.
I agree with that comment, Tommy, and it would encourage staff, if there's ever incomplete submissions, to not accept them until they are complete. But it sounds like there's nobody here who's going to make a proposal that we deny this request. So how about somebody make a motion to approve the request?
I so move.
I second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the variances as the variances requested. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thanks. All right, next up on the agenda.
Thank you, guys.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Jim.
Have a good night.
You too.
You too.
And then, so I gotta get to. Next item on the agenda is regular business. Number 2, Appeal 22-001. Mao and Associates has the pole position and variance request for 2022. On behalf of Mosky Corporation, property owner proposed to pave a side yard in very density R3 district at 1420 South Huron Road. Applicant requests to deviate from the following requirements of Chapter 44, Section 44-554, Table 44.2, side yard setback. Paul, would you orient us a little bit, and then we'll ask John to comment?
Sure, yes. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. This is a property located on South Huron Road. I got the aerial photo up here showing this vacant, large tract of land, heavily forested, but again, near South Huron Road, joins the village of Bellevue. This is just I guess southeast of our business park, or adjoins the business park. We recently have gone through a comprehensive plan amendment and rezoning to permit an apartment development here. What I brought up here is the site plan, kind of showing at least the southern layout, showing at least a 15-unit building here, and the encroachment of the paving into the side yard setback. So the applicant or the property owner owns property in the village of Bellevue as well with an apartment development. And they're hoping to kind of bridge that boundary by adding a detached garage. With that said, based on the city limits here and the setback requirements, there's a variance needed for the encroachment into the side yard setback. We could also probably view this as off-street parking as a setback encroachment as well, but we've just kind of decided that this is basically an interior side yard setback that's variance that's needed to pave in the side yard.
Thanks, Paul. Let's hear from the petitioner. Oh, we can't hear. There we go.
Thank you, everyone. Good evening. To go ahead and follow up on Paul's presentation there, the property is owned by Mosky in Green Bay here, and they are looking to go ahead to create multifamily development here in the city. And currently, the property to the south is also owned by Mosky Corp and is Huron Grove Apartments. There is a creek that runs through both the property to the south in Bellevue and this one here in Green Bay. And with that, that leaves a small tract of land to go ahead and develop on, a small triangle. And this is where, while both properties are owned by Kosmosky, and they'll both have shared amenities such as the folks here in the north being able to use the clubhouse to the south. That creek really goes ahead and varies up the amount of land that's being able to use for the folks here in the Green Bay side. So to allow for parking to keep on being connected back to the folks here in the new development in Green Bay, we felt this was the most appropriate to go ahead and actually get feasible parking in this area. There is some 5,000 or so square feet of developable land that's in the Bellevue portion. If there were to be a driveway entrance off of Bellevue, it would add some safety concerns due to two drive entrances being rather close to one another, both the one proposed and then one to the south. And it would be severely limited as far as actual usable space, because the best spot to come off is where we're proposing off to the Green Bay side. There's just, depending on where the best spot to go ahead and take your actual drive entrance comes from the north up along Green Bay. Otherwise, it leads to a very awkward parking lot area here to service the folks in Green Bay.
All right. Well, thank you to John. Any questions for the petitioner? Any questions for staff? All right, let's discuss.
And is there anybody on that wants to speak against?
Oh, thanks, Tommy.
Yep, no worries.
Is there anybody else present who wishes to speak for or against this requested variance? Okay. All right. Well, what do you think, gentlemen?
Looks to me like a lot of this is due to the boundary between Green Bay and Bellevue, which creates the jurisdictional issue of having to have a side yard setback right in the middle of the total development. For all of those reasons, I think that it makes, as he's explained, I think it makes perfect sense to do what he's proposing, and I'm in favor of granting the variance.
Similar sentiments from others, or others disagree with Don?
I would agree with Don. When I went out and visited the property, it's in the very initial stages of development, and this seems to be a good common sense solution to the predicament that they're facing with respect to the boundaries and the creeks and all of those issues.
Yeah, it does seem that there's a number of physical and political constraints on the parcel, and the developer appears to be making the best use of the developable land. So anybody else? Tommy, any comment?
No, except for, again, the administrative side of things. And I mentioned this last month that you were here. I will always applaud individuals that take the time to actually fill out the application and the case being made. And this was extremely thorough. So on the record, applauding those that are really taking the time to answer the questions that we're asking on the application. So thank you again. Very thorough.
Great.
Agreed.
Okay, well, given all of that, and I would entertain a motion to approve the variance as requested.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I suggest and motion that we approve the variance that the applicant has presented to us tonight.
Great.
I'll second.
Okay, we've got a second by Don, first by Don, a second by Tom, and any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I
Okay, was that a late yes, or is that an aye on the negative side there, Tommy?
It was a late aye, sorry.
Okay, all right,
Aye.
great. All right, the motion is approved. John and Connor, thank you.
Thank you all. Appreciate it. It's Connor Kosmowski with Mosky Corp. Thank you very much.
Take care. All right, next up, item 22-002. Also, we'll be hearing from John on this as well, on behalf of a different enterprise this time, Newfield Enterprises 2 LLC, looking to construct a new Caribou Coffee restaurant building and a parking lot in General Commercial District on West Mason Street at 1616 West Mason. They want to deviate from floor area ratio. So let's hear from Mr. Newmeyer. He can orient us to the project, and then we'll listen to the petitioner.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. This is the northwest corner of Military and West Mason. And this large building here is the Burlington Coat Factory and Michael's. There's a gas station immediately on the corner here, and the proposal is for a Caribou Coffee just along Military Avenue. The property is on general commercial. If you've ever driven by in the summer, you've kind of seen this image before with plants out here. This is the location of the Caribou Coffee, proposed location. The proposal is to create two lots to kind of cut off the primary lot and create a small 11,000 square foot lot for the Caribou Coffee here on Military. With the site plan, they're proposing a building that's about 630 square feet in size. Again, with the FAR, that's the relationship between the building and the lot, and that puts them well below the average or the requirement of 0.1. Much like the scooters and the RVs that you've seen before, a very similar situation where the building is smaller than the lot, and they need that variance in order to build on the site.
Paul, can you tell us anything about the flow of traffic? I didn't quite grasp how the in and out's going to work there for that coffee shop based on that site plan.
Sure. Let me just back up to the aerial photo. There's an existing drive here off of Military, kind of the north part of the site, and they'll be utilizing that. I don't believe there's any new access to Military, so we'll be coming through that primary entrance or back through the main parking lot here. I think there is some shared access agreements on this property, but this, I believe, will be the primary access to the site.
Great. All right. Are there any questions for Paul before we hear from John?
Do we have any reason to expect, Paul, or suspect that there's a plan that could use this property better than is being proposed here, at least more intensively?
Well, I think, philosophically, staff has talked about some of these large commercial areas, and I go back to the Green Bay Plaza as an example where you've got a lot of pavement that could allow for outlots. And I think with these properties here at Newfield, I think they're trying to utilize or maximize what they can by creating some of these outlots. So I think it's well within our wishes that they're maximizing the commercial. Would we like to see more larger buildings potentially, but we don't necessarily dictate that. I think the uses that are proposed, like the scooters, like the RVs and the caribou, those are appropriate commercial uses on auto-oriented commercial corridors. So I think it meets our wishes, but we'd always like to see bigger, larger commercial developments as well.
Okay, thank you.
All right, let's hear from the petitioner.
Well, again, so as Paula mentioned, this is pretty similar to the requests that were made last month for both the scooters and RVs. Locations that are on the same block off to the west along Mason itself. As far as size and function compared to the rest of the property here, if you see on the site plan itself, you'll notice some angled parking. As Paula mentioned, driveway for entrance would come off of the entryway between the strip mall to the north and the Burlington/Michael's store that is already existing, the old Cub Foods, and then head southbound and wrap around once you pass the drive-through to go back up to either access the controlled intersection over by the new scooters and RVs, or to loop back around to come back over to Military. Part of the issue here, why the size of the plan, this lot and shared accesses, is to go ahead and utilize space that has not been used here in the past or underused. How about, let's say that not for the parking purposes, but to have a seasonal floral shop in this area. But then to allow for still the parking here for the existing tenants that have existing agreements with one another for parking minimums that they need to have for both individual stores and shared parking. So that's where the store comes into it. As far as its FAR and the deviation, it goes back to what we had here for scooters, trying to go ahead and utilize space where this is a drive lane. We still meet all the setbacks for commercial purposes, but it is a drive-through. It's not a larger store, so this fit in pretty well with its location within the entire mall campus of the northwest corner of Military and Mason.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Leroy? Paul, I might, if we could see the site plan again on the screen, I think I may have a question. So is there in this lot, then this outlot, there's no the flow is not going to be wrapping around the building. It's just going to come down the side and flow back into the lot then?
Correct, right. Yeah, usually with drive-throughs, you see that wraparound, right, where it goes around the entire building. In this case, it's really one side. It's on the west side of the building. So if you can see here, this is the footprint of the building here. There's a dumpster. John mentioned the angled parking here. So I think you're going to come, from north to south. You're going to come in, stop here, and then you're going to route back out, maybe going through an aisle space or heading back to the controlled intersection.
Sure.
Is that larger rectangle the lot edge?
This would be the westerly property line. If you can see my cursor here, my mouse.
I can't see it.
Okay.
Yeah, that rectangle that goes a little ways onto the angled parking spaces. Right. Yeah, that's the boundary of the parcel.
That's the proposed boundary. Yeah.
So the problem we have and why we have to get an application is that rectangle's too big. What's the rationale to making that rectangle of the lot so big in relationship to that building? I guess I'm asking the applicant, is there a reason why this, lot is so much bigger than the building?
Go ahead.
All right. Yeah, understood. That makes sense. And we looked at different reasons for what the sizes were. So I think the two most applicable answers to this are you could go ahead and take that western line and shove it all the way down to where there was just one drive lane for the scooters drive through only, but not for traffic going to the still going southbound and looping around it.
Right.
You could do that, but the issue then is you'll know where the drive box ordering spot is north of the building itself. We couldn't include that at all. That would be off of there. And you'll note there are still 3 parking stalls that are on the far northeastern part of the property for the Caribou Coffee itself, for just for those employees there to give them specific parking. Those 3 things are what kind of dictated to where this all goes to make this still functionally work within the site.
Okay. Thank
And
you.
And a follow-up then, because the lot, encroaches on the parking that is probably, I'm assuming, Burlington's parking, whatever, there's an agreement going to be between those parcels in terms of the shared access to that parking.
There are a number of agreements, way too many of agreements between all these places. Yeah.
All right.
Right.
Any other questions for either staff or the petitioner? All right, discussion. What do you gentlemen believe we ought to do in this situation here?
We want to ask first if there's anybody else.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Tommy. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak either for or against this request? All right. Okay, discussion among the board.
I think this application is similar to what we approved last month. I think it's going to happen more and more. So we're bumping up against a rule. And I wonder, I'm in favor of approving this application. And I'm wondering if we need to look at the rule in terms of this application of it, maybe possibly recommending to council to lessen that ratio in these instances. I don't know.
Is this yeah, I'm going to go back and ask of the petitioner or Paul, is this in another instance where we have no indoor seating or indoor ordering? It's only drive-through?
So there is no indoor seating. There is a walk-up area.
Yay.
On the south side of the building. Yeah. And there is some outdoor patio seating out there as well.
I wholeheartedly endorse walk-up windows for these sorts of auto-dependent uses, even in an area that's so auto-dependent. There are pedestrians all the time walking around that area, and for them to be able to go up and order a cup of coffee, I think is an appropriate thing to do.
Yep, I agree.
And won't get a no vote from me as a result. Any other questions about this or anything else logistically that might impact your ability to take action on this? If not, I would like to hear your thoughts or motions.
I'll just pop in quickly. I agree with Jim. Very similar, and leading towards the end of the meeting, some administrative questions or thoughts that I'll have that'll address some of the other comments that Tom brought up in email and Jim just brought up as well. But overall, I think we approved last month's and it seems very similar.
Yeah, and interesting. I mean, actually, in some respects, this is a more optimal design for a drive-through because it doesn't have the loop around the building, right? It's just a single loaded building in terms of the traffic flow, and gets them to the shop and away into the flow in the parking lot maybe more efficiently than it would with the folks trying to exit having to cross maybe the stream of folks trying to enter if it looped around the building. Yeah, my biggest concerns are about traffic flow around that corner of the building. At Burlington, that driveway onto Military is fairly far north of, the building itself. And so folks coming down through that parking lot, either heading to Burlington or to Michael's, may come around that corner blind or leaving Burlington or Michael's, or even developments further to the west that they're able to, to sneak out onto the Military Avenue side, could come around that corner. And if there's a bunch of standing cars there for a coffee shop, I've got some concern about that. But I imagine there's enough space there that if there needs to be any sort of traffic direction work, that the owners of the property will figure that out. All right. Is there anybody else who wants to talk about this? Otherwise, let me hear a motion.
Motion to approve.
Okay,
I'll second. You can have the motion.
thanks, Tommy.
Got a motion from Jim and a second from Tommy to approve the variance as requested. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
all.
sir.
And again, thanks, Rob. Thanks on the applications. Keep it up.
All right, so we are finished with those items. We've got informational items. Well, I'd entertain a motion to close the floor.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Oh, Don
Second-
got it.
seconded.
Tommy seconded it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we're closed. We've got any procedural discussions we want to have?
So real quick, hopefully my internet's somewhat stable, but I think it's a good time. I think, Tom, obviously, I'm sure you want to speak to your email, or if your email was addressed in a way that you felt good, but Jim, you brought up it as well, is that I would love the opportunity at some point to start kind of trying to figure out what this next step is that we're all kind of talking about. Is, if we see things pop up over and over and it seems to make sense for us, how do we refer that to council? What does that process look like? I think that's a super important part of what we can do to improve how the city functions with the community. And so, Tom, is there anything you wanted to add about your email or questions?
No, I feel that we're approaching a tipping point with respect to how the city does business, and if we want to make or suggest a change, although Noel's comment I thought was very germane with respect to these smaller sized businesses and allowing for a walk-up window. And would we want to make that a basic requirement or some kind of consideration? I think he makes a very good point with respect to pedestrian traffic and the likelihood of it being there, and it should maybe be considered when we're looking at these smaller footprints. So
Yeah,
I think from what Paul said is, we do have, it is within our purview to make a recommendation not only to the council, but also to cover the plan commission as well, and let them weigh in on it too.
Yeah, and I think that maybe from a procedure standpoint, Paul, you can talk about this, but it's, one body's got to ask to have something referred to another body or something. So it maybe goes through communications at council, and then they refer to plan commission or something like that, if there is needing to be a look at zoning or something.
Yeah, I think in this case, the board is observing that maybe they've seen X type of variance, and that kind of raises a concern for the board. And I think simply what you can do is, collectively put your thoughts together and share it with me. And then what I do is I go back to our staff. We have a discussion about, well, here's what the Board of Appeals thinks, what should we do? And we kind of develop a plan, and eventually get it to the Plan Commission and Council to maybe rectify that issue, or come back to the board and say, look, here's what staff thinks. It's kind of a fluid discussion, but
Sure.
ultimately I think it comes to our staff and we provide a professional recommendation, and then we chart it out to Plan Commission and Council. So, the FAR maybe is on your radar. It's been on our radar for a while. And, I think some of these smaller uses are getting penalized potentially. So, we're not here to discourage development. We want to encourage development. So I think we have to look at, is the ordinance hindering this, or is there unnecessary approvals they have to go through to put up a store?
Yeah, and I certainly think the argument for reducing floor area ratio for an auto-dependent drive-through place that doesn't have a dining area, that is maybe food service, but doesn't have dining in building, that could be something we could, make an adjustment on, and reduce it, or reduce it for those that offer a walk-up window.
Well, I also wanted to mention too, with these drive-throughs, scooters, RVs, and now Caribou, we do have specific design standards for drive-throughs that involves aisle width and turning radiuses and stacking, and the need for having access to a sidewalk. So those are all things that we look at as part of the site plan. So you're only kind of seeing one aspect of the development, which it's deficient. It doesn't meet the farm, but we do have other oversight on how the site gets laid out and
Sure,
designed.
and actually, all of those things you just said argue to increase parcel size or lot size without increasing building size. So they actually
They
exacerbate
do,
the challenge, right?
So
I got a question. How do we just kind of informally get together in a way that isn't, bringing a forum together? I mean, do we have to do that like now after meetings? We just can't get together and meet, right? Because then we have a forum. Or is that okay?
No.
Well, I think the thing is too, and Paul raised a good point here as he's talking about this, right? The city has got staff whose job it is to figure out how to write the ordinances to make the developers jump through the hoops in a way that result in safe, sound, and efficient, development of the city space, right? So we don't have to fix that, right? We don't have to say, hey, let's get together and do a workshop and say, we really think that, X% is better than Y% or something like that. I think, one of the things we could do as a body, because our principal purpose, at least the way I see it, and I'm, not trying to speak as our chair, I know he's on the call too, but it seems like, our principal purpose here is to look at development proposals that are at odds with the ordinance and see if there isn't a reason to allow for that violation of the ordinance because of some special circumstance that exists, in the development or the property or the adjacent properties, which happen to be in another municipality or whatever. And so, but when we see the same thing coming up over and over again, a couple of years ago, it was the width of driveways in industrial areas, right? We can and should, I think, use this time to say something like, gosh, staff, we'd really like you to look at floor area ratios for auto-dependent drive-through businesses, and if Paul goes away and comes back and says, yeah, we talked about it, we don't think we should make any changes, and we all feel really strongly about it, well, then we can talk about what we do in that circumstance to nudge the issue along if it means that we're going to keep having to grant the same sort of thing that we grant every month. But I think the first step maybe is just to say, we recognize there's a problem, and maybe some of us can say, somebody can make it in the form of a motion that just says, here we respectfully request that planning staff investigate floor area ratios around this issue, and we'd be happy to hear your report out at some point in the future.
Yeah, and I
Well
agree
said.
with. I agree with everything Noel said, and it's
Yep.
exactly where I think we've been trying to take, portions of this in the last couple of years of this. What I would like to get your guys' opinion on is, I think that yes, there are times where in a moment 2 months in a row we've seen 3 of these, and it makes sense. However, I don't want to lose sight of the ones that maybe don't have and back to back. And I think we're going on maybe 2 years where there was this idea of keeping track of all the variances and what they were on a spreadsheet, Paul. And I know we were sharing that a couple of times. I haven't seen it in the last couple of meetings, but
It should be coming quarterly. Yep. So Jesse's tracking those for us, and we try and give you a quarterly report.
so is it possible, here's my thought, gentlemen, is that if, especially we're also coming into an election year for aldermen, is it possible to get like an aggregate of the last 2 years of those quarterly reports on some sort of document that can be shared with the board members ahead of next month's meeting, where we can look at it and say, okay, cool, here's what we're seeing, our common ones, so for example, in the last 2 months, we saw 3 of the floor area ratios, and there would be an aggregate of the last 2 years of like, okay, widening driveways or, side yard setbacks or whatever it is that we could get for the last 2 years. And then I think if we have, some time, gentlemen, we could then take a peek at those and come back and make a formal recommendation, in February. We're like, hey, these are the 3 that we want the staff to look in, or get alderman perspective on, looking at the code. What do you guys think about that? Like pushing it to next month, making sure we come in prepared mentally, knowing that we're going to have some administrative time at the end of the meeting, and that we get that document ahead of time. Let's just spend a little time studying that so we come prepared for some good discussion.
Sounds good to me.
Sounds good.
Yes, I think keeping in your vein of having a surveillance of the type of variance requests, it might be worth considering some sort of a tripwire that in the event that we see, let's say 3, 4, 5, or 6 variances of the same type come across the board, maybe not so much to depend on our memories that we've seen these, but part of Paul's record keeping to establish something that would send up a flag and say, hey, fellas, this is what we've seen in the last 6 months or 3 months or what have you, to make it more of an automatic one rather than an anecdotal or conversational type of a thing to follow up on.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. And if that's a better way to approach this, is more of like you're saying, I'll use, a tripwire situation. Hey, once we get above 6 within a certain period of time, then we need it comes up for discussion on the agenda. Or, the different way I was approaching it, I have no preference, was more of the report. If we get it every year, hey, we'll get it every quarter, and at the end of the year we review and we say, hey, of this entire year, the most we saw was 7, driveway widenings. And it's an annual review that we do. And we say, okay, let's refer that one. However we want to approach it, that's the same goal, is trying to get that feedback.
I just think that putting it on an annual basis, we might be kicking the can farther down the road than we want to. Yet sometimes we might have a more immediate need to say, for example, the square footage deal. It seems like right now drive ups are really hot. So, why not grease the skids a little bit for them?
Yeah, take a look at it in 22 rather than at the end of the year or something like that. But
No.
so I think that those all sound good. I think that we still run the risk of saying, even with a trip, saying, well, geez, 6 people wanted to have bigger garages. Six people are always going to want to have bigger garages, right? So some of these are going to keep coming, right? A duplex, a side-by duplex ranch style, built with the garages in the middle with only 1 lane going up to them. Somebody's going to want to widen that drive lane. It doesn't matter, what comes down, some of those things are going to be there. And in the case of those drive lanes as they relate to, the firefighters and where the location all to the door, those seem like things that we're probably going to have to talk about at the table here, rather than, maybe being able to craft some workaround, right? I think the things too, if we're going to do this and have a conversation about looking at these reports and talking about them, I would really like to hear, staff's perspective on what they might want to do to make some of them easier to handle, right? Are there things that are coming up in some of these requests that maybe a tweak to our forms would be more helpful, than changing the zoning, right? Or are there other things that we could do to make it easier to review some of these requests? Or are there things that, as a community, we should be looking at and say, what, those shouldn't come to this table. Those should really just be handled administratively. And maybe we've got a few of those that are the regulars that come up that we should talk about, and, do whatever it is we need to do to encourage, a change that allows staff to just approve or disapprove of some of these things, so that they don't even come to this table. Like this, we should be working harder on some of the issues that we face. The easy ones, we should be able to build a machine to take care of those, right?
Yeah, I agree. So what do we want to do formally? Like, do we want to take any action tonight on the floor area ratio one, or do you want to do more of a larger discussion next month with the report and with staff time to think about it? what do you guys want to do to move forward? Because I think we're all in agreement that we want to continue to improve this process.
Well, Tommy, you kind of already punted it by saying, let's look at the whole report. I guess the follow-up question I would have to that, is that a reasonable request to be able to have that for next time to staff?
Yeah, I think we have it already. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay, so let's put that on the agenda then for next month and
Yeah.
talk about it.
Yeah, and is it possible to go back? You know, again, I threw out 2 years because in my head, that's what I feel like I remember we kind of started asking for that report. But just go back as far as you have record of that. I mean, if you can go back 2 years even without the spreadsheet, I don't know if it would necessarily be that hard to add, 3 or 4 more months of looking at the agenda and just codifying those on the spreadsheet. I think 2 years is a good range for our first go at this, and then we can either do it quarterly, we can do it every 6 months, just to kind of look at it and see if we're seeing any of those tripwires or red flags. And then Tom, I totally agree with you. If we're seeing it in the moment, maybe we just add it, say, hey, let's discuss that, as we see it too. But I think carving out time for this group to really dive into that, I think is critical.
Yeah, at least quarterly sounds great.
All right. So next month, we'll throw that on the agenda as an administrative discussion item. Thank you, Paul and staff, for putting that together. I think it'll be helpful. And I do think also something we should continue to think about is, alderman involvement. There are certain areas where an alder is representing a district and it's filled with duplexes, right? But that doesn't exist in like the Astor area. And so there are going to be things that pop up in certain areas within the city where is there a way to approach the code that approaches neighborhoods and how those neighborhoods were developed? I don't know if we're there yet, but I do think that's an interesting concept as well to think through.
Yeah, that's fair.
yeah.
All right, cool. Any other administrative things before we wrap up? And Noel, I will say you did the best tee up. You read the whole thing. This is the agenda item and the number and everything. So I don't know if it was the best, but it was definitely the most thorough. Well done. Thank you for stepping in for me.
Here.
Thanks, Tommy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think all that's left on the agenda is our next meeting announcement, February, 22nd?
21st.
21st.
All right, everybody got that. And again, one more time, I know I said it 3 times, but again, I apologize for my digital presence not being amazing. But Noel, heck of a job stepping in. And it's always good to see you, gentlemen. And we're still looking for an alternate, Paul, is that correct?
We are, yes.
So if anybody knows anybody, refer them to Paul or to the mayor's office.
Great.
Correct.
Good.
So keep that in the back of your minds. And other than that, it's great to see you all. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Anybody got one? Thank you, Noel. Any
Second.
All right, thanks, Don. All right, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Say
Hi.
bye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, and any opposed? No. All right, gentlemen, meeting's over.